I almost kicked the bucket a few years ago. How it happened isn't important, but I was in a perpetual dream state for 3 days. It seems like a lot longer than that. Maybe talking about my experience a little more will help me comprehend what I experienced. In general terms, my near death dream consisted of different categories. I'm going to try and talk about my dreams in terms of categories so I can organize my memories easier. The dream contained feelings of evil and dread, feelings of joy, peace, and hope. I met people from outer space who didn't speak. They only wrote on little notepads. They looked just like you and I, human. There were alternate reality beings that seemed rather familiar to me. It was like they were people I knew once who loved me. Searching my real life memory, I remember their sounds, but in this dream I was one of them. There were Native Americans also. I was one of those. And we could summon alien spacecraft. The entire tribe would lay flat on their backs under a starry night sky, and we would mimic the rhythm of the one who struck the drums by patting our thigh in unison. One female Indian could tread on air. In essence, she could fly. I was in a spacecraft that landed here on Earth. The occupants of the craft were also Native American. They couldn't leave the craft without holding their breath, and they could only be outside of the craft for a defined length of time, as long as it took for the Indians on board to chant a particular song. There were horses that could run on ice. Using some special shoes, a team of horses would pull a person behind them as he slid on the ground, kind of like barefoot water skiing. Only this was on snow. The man was special somehow, because not many people were able to handle the team. Also, there was a special attribute to the person. Once he got going, he could levitate off the ground and float behind the horses as if he were on an invisible carriage. The hospital I was in, or should I say, some dark, scary version of it, was in my dream. Several different portions of the dream contained the hospital. In one, I was being hidden from my visiting family by the staff because they didn't want my loved ones to know. They wanted to kill me. Another portion, I was being cleaned and packed for human consumption. Yet another portion had me repeating the same terrifying trip at light speed from my rolling hospital bed all the way to the end of my driveway in my childhood home in Remsen, New York, about 1,500 miles away. Every time this repeated, I saw a thread or a tracing of my trip. I was supposed to get it right, or I was doomed to repeat this for all of eternity. Another part of my dream had to do with a war of some sort. People were hoarding what little possessions they could scrounge up. Hunting was prohibited, and all the hunting lands were fenced off. The government was hunting game to feed people. At one point, I was a cleaned and packed mallard duck. This was truly terrifying. I believe at one point there was some kind of chemical or bio attack. One group of about 500 foreigners were actually killed in a housing facility. They came with their families to the Southwest, Texas, I think, to buy homes that were built just for them. I remember thinking how bad it would be to be the ones to go in there to remove all the bodies. Somehow I knew it was going to be a long time before anyone could go in that building because of what killed the people. Another portion of the dream was what looked like a factory that was set on fire. The way it smoldered in the night made me think it was pink Owens Corning fiberglass. It wasn't exactly burning. It was glowing red. There were cars backed up on what looked like an interstate off-ramp. People were standing outside their cars looking. A woman holding her baby was slowly walking behind the fenced-in factory parking lot near the hot, red glowing material, whatever it was, and she was holding her baby. And I had the distinct feeling that the baby was dead as she carefully and slowly set the baby down in the glowing embers. As I looked out the window of an airplane I suddenly seemed to be in, I could see everything. I could see the cars on the ramp, the burning building. I could even see the woman who placed her baby in their burning embers. In this dream, there was the anticipation of a nuclear explosion somewhere out west. People were taken to underground shelters. I was with some folks at one time who were walking down a deep drainage canal. It seemed to wind deeper and deeper beneath the ground. One part of my dream had to do with trash and space. I was with some human-looking alien beings on the moon, of all places. The aliens were disgusted that a mound of garbage had reached from Earth to the moon's surface. We began cleanup. In another part of the dream, I am starting to remember as I count details that we had prepared for something. I can't quite remember what it is, though. I have the distinct feeling it had to do with putting up an antenna of some sort. It seemed like it was something we should have did sooner, but my brother and I finally got to it in our old house on Miller Street in Utica, New York. In one part of the dream, I think I was a seagull or some other creature that was hanging around with the seagulls. They took care to make sure I didn't fall as they flew about the impossibly tall mast of some seagoing vessel. The gulls, or whatever they were, created a pallet for me to lay on. I was just going to ride, but I was chased away by something. At another point of the dream, I was a small being, a bug-sized thing that could fall beneath the narrow cracks between rocks to hide with the rest of my fellow beings. I don't know what sort of being I was in this case, but I rode a small bull-like being. I had a sword, and my fellow beings seemed to like competing in fighting matches. I think my bull-like creature was killed at one point. There were more alien parts to this dream. At one point, I was surrounded by about 4 clear-talking aliens. They seemed to calmly discuss how they should proceed to treat me. My family were actually aliens in one portion of the dream. My mother, father, brother, and sister and me came here on a ship from a seemingly nearby planet. Something happened to the ship, and we had to leave abruptly. I don't remember what it was. At one point, I was standing in the sunlight on the grass-covered hill of my childhood home. I could feel the finiteness of my life, of the universe. That time actually began when I was placed there and would soon end. It was like the clock from the beginning of my existence didn't accumulate. It actually began at its end point and started counting backwards. I dreamt of other Native Americans. One such dream had to do with getting out of a predicament. Only a firewalker could get in and out of a place to get something. I don't remember what it was. Every so often, fire would blast out of the hole in the ground where the firewalker went in. The firewalker could jump really high, enabling him to escape the hole in the ground after retrieving the item. Others tried and died. There was more stuff that I'll